Before we start this video, I want to thank our sponsor, Skillshare. If you haven't heard of them, they are an online learning community. Skillshare offer thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people. They cover a wide variety of classes, including design, photography, video, freelancing, and many more. It's also incredibly affordable. It's less than $10 a month with an annual subscription. I myself have been learning about street photography, which is taught by Craig Whitehead. The course teaches you how to visualize scenes and how to edit your photos, and I'm using these new skills when taking photos for Instagram. And we have a special offer for you today. The first 1,000 of my subscribers to click in the description below will get a 2-month free trial of premium membership so you can explore your creativity immediately. The history of Audi buying Lamborghini back in '98, and that really was a game changer for the brand. You suddenly had these amazing looking cars which suddenly worked. Now I know that they're not as reliable as, say, a BMW or a Porsche, but you've still got that Italian flair with the cars. So, and these are hand built, and I've actually been to see the Aventador SVJ being hand built in Bologna, and it's quite incredible. So they have 2 factories in Bologna. They have one that makes the Aventador SVJ, and then they have another factory which pumps out the Lamborghini Urus, and they're like 2 completely different factories. One is really huge, the Urus one is huge, and a lot of it is automated, and the SVJ is really all done by hand, and it's quite incredible watching it being made, and you see all the leather samples. It's an amazing factory to go and visit, and it's open to the public. So what makes this car special? It is the engine. That V12 is pumping out 740 brake horsepower, but it's the mechanical noise that it makes it so special. When you plant your foot down, it sounds like a nuclear power reactor. It's just one of the best noises I've ever heard in a car. I remember when TGE used to own the yellow SV, and I remember I was waiting for him once in Belgrave Square, and I heard him coming probably about 5 minutes before he arrived. And what makes this engine different is that you actually can hear it inside the car as well as outside the car. A lot of engines you actually can't hear when you're inside the car. This one, you really hear it, and it is so lovely. I've driven the SVJ, and surprisingly this feels louder, it feels more special, and it feels a little bit more mechanical. I mean, the width of this country lane really is filled up by the Aventador, so if something's coming the other way, you're in trouble. That is one downside to this car, the width of the car. But when you're driving it, you don't notice that width, which I think is really important. People that look at this car and think, oh, it's too big, it's too wide. It feels fantastic. The handling is actually really, really good. When I first jumped into an Aventador, I didn't like it, but that's because I just didn't have the confidence to push it. Now, what's really interesting for me, personally, after owning a Lamborghini, is that I thought the Performante Spider that I own was possibly the best Lamborghini that they had ever made, because it blended German build quality with Italian looks, and it had that gorgeous screaming V10 engine, and it handled so well. However, once I jumped into an Aventador SV and I drove it with a little bit of enthusiasm, I realized that there's a huge difference between a V12 and a V10 engine from Lamborghini. This thing is incredible. We're in fifth, go down to fourth, third. Whoa! And it's not just the acceleration, because this car can do 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds. It's fast, but it's not the speed, it's the way it does that acceleration and the noise that goes with that acceleration. And because you're driving something that's fairly wide and heavy, when you get that corner right and you're going around bends and you flow through a bend and you use the grip of the car and you use the aero, it just feels so rewarding in a way that the Performante doesn't. When you get it right in this car, it feels very rewarding. You go around corners that you just don't think such a big wide car can do, and you go round them and it just sticks to the road. Very surprising how good this car handles. Now, what makes it better than the SVJ, in my opinion, I think that the lines are more simple. I'm not a massive fan of the kit that they've added to the SVJ. This car happens to also be louder than the SVJ. Let's talk about a few things that maybe you won't like if you own one. So, the seats. You can't order one of these seats with comfort seats because no one will buy it. Everyone wants these carbon back race seats. They're not comfortable, but they're not terrible. However, if you're going on a long journey, really don't offer a lot of support. It's like sitting on a piece of cardboard. That's the first thing. And a lot of people actually complain about the seats. The second thing is the fuel consumption is ridiculous. You can actually see the fuel gauge going down as you're driving the car. Now, that will annoy some people. Some people might find it amusing. Petrol prices have come down in 2020, so it's not as bad as it was in 2019, but it's still pretty alarming to see the petrol gauge go down so quickly. I think that the width is a problem if you live somewhere with fairly narrow streets. So if you lived in central London, you may find this quite challenging to drive around a number of roads. I know in my hometown of Hampstead that there's quite a lot of narrow roads. I wouldn't even try and get this through, wouldn't even attempt. And it's pretty tricky when you're on a small country lane like I've been doing today, but we've had no issues. Now if you leave it in automatic, the gearbox does jerk exactly the same way the SVJ does, but I try to use the paddles a lot to get around that, and I put it into manual a lot of the time just so that I'm using the paddles. So if you look back at the review I did of the SVJ, we did exactly the same thing. We just put it into manual and we use the paddles, and that's a good way around the single clutch gearbox, which hasn't yet been developed for the Aventador into a dual clutch. Maybe the next iteration coming out will have a dual clutch gearbox, but for now we've only got a single clutch gearbox in the SV and the SVJ. So like I said, if you put it into manual mode, you can get around that problem. It makes it more engaging as well when you use the paddles. I'm just going to drive the car now, and I'm going to let you enjoy some lovely B-roll of this beautiful, sexy Italian Lamborghini V12. The Lamborghini Aventador SV. How can you not like a car with dihedral doors, a V12 engine, designed by Italians to look like a fighter jet? I love it. I love it. I absolutely love it. I love the engine. I love the styling. I love the drive. I love the thrill when you accelerate. I love the noise. I love everything about it. I'm a complete convert. A few years ago, if you said to me, would you want an Aventador? I would have said no way. But luckily, I've got two lovely friends, Phil and Nick, who've let me drive quite a few miles in each of their cars, and I've fallen in love with this car. As I said before, this is now one of my top 5 favorite cars of all time. If you've got the money, go and buy one. If you haven't got the money, start saving up.